We are on the road, but just down the road at College Rifles Club here in Auckland. We are rubbing shoulders with the clubbies, plus we're going to meet some Black Ferns. Well, we were promised 15 All Black tests this year. How many of those are we going to get? Yeah, we want to know as well. Plus, the great debate of the greatest 15 is about to ignite. That's all live here in Auckland on The Breakdown.
Kia ora koutou katoa, hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, it's great to be here at College Rifles in Auckland. We've got so much to talk about tonight. A lot has happened in the last few hours. Of course, announcements coming out of New Zealand Rugby about the future All Black Test matches this year. And big news, Sir John Kirwan's going to be stoked. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, not so much for the Warriors, JK, Hannah's with us as well, but he's coming back to New Zealand early and possibly pulling on an Auckland Rugby jersey. You're grinning once again. He's not going to play for Maris though, so that's all that matters.
I can't say he's going to do that. Well, he's on the wall here at College Rifles.
Played sevens for the club, I hear.
Yeah. No.
Big news.
Rifles boy, through and through.
Through and through. This is big news, right, Hannah? You talk about the fact that we know he's coming back to play for the Blues over the next couple of years. Look, it's been a difficult season for the Warriors. We know the talent level. How excited are you to see him out in the field? Where would you play him before JK gets going on his rant?
Yeah, the Blues will be rubbing their hands together, won't they? Getting him back a little bit earlier than what they would have thought. Hopefully getting some game time during the Bunnings NPC. I would like to see him at centre. I think he's got a good skill set for centre. Quick hands, lots of vision, big on D.
To be fair, we haven't seen him kick yet, so I'm pretty sure we put him in the midfield. He can run, he can pass. Go to the Warriors too as well, to give him that early release, because his future lies in rugby right now, but he's chasing an opportunity to be an All Black. He wants to go to Rugby World Cup. There's not a lot of time for him. JK, you brought Benji Marshall back to the Blues, didn't play out, but Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has played rugby union. Where would you play him? How quickly would you put him out there?
I'll get him out there straight away. I originally thought that maybe playing sevens would be good because you've got the sort of mini skills, you know, you have to clean out in one and learn all those techniques. Him having played rugby probably changes that. Get him out there as soon as you can if he feels up to it. The only thing you'd have to be careful of there is, like, he's come off a pretty tough season. I mean, they are really living COVID, aren't they? They've been over there for a long time. But I'd play him at 12, probably just because of his feet. I think the hardest thing for him will be learning that subtle passing game, because in rugby league you're encouraged not to pass it under pressure. This
is not easy though, Hannah, for Alama Iramia. If he's coming into that Auckland environment, how to transition in. He still wants to go out and perform. He's got players who've done all the mahi, done all the work going into the season. Is that going to be a different challenge for Alama?
Yeah, it will be. I think a gentle transition into the season. He's obviously all teams will have some injuries throughout the year. Being able to introduce him somewhere through the season, just exciting to see him out there, right?
He's shaking his head as usual. He's shaking his head for the last 20 seconds.
He'll get the call from Foster. He's out there, Lama. Lama, he's out there. That'll be it.
That's what you would do. That's what you would do. I spoke to some people earlier on that probably on a plane and get them in the sevens team. We'll talk to them a little bit later as well, because remember, of course, the All Black Sevens campaign kicked off today earlier on. Look, the big news coming out of New Zealand Rugby is, of course, what's going with the Bledisloes. And understanding is that Australia, they are coming to New Zealand, will then possibly play a second test, and then the All Blacks will travel to Perth to play the Australians once again. So that means all of a sudden you start talking about the bubble that has burst, JK. Frustrating, disappointing, the fact that it looks as though there's a possibility that Argentina might play their tests against the All Blacks in Australia once again.
Yeah, well, I was trying to work it out before. Well, you were trying to explain to me, and I was incredibly confused, which is not silly. So the end of the South African tournament, the Argentinians go over there, that they won't be able to come to New Zealand. And so how does South Africa come here?
Well, everyone's going to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, so they're not going to get in, are they?
And that's the challenge, is the fact that when you think about Argentina, Hannah, they are always going to Australia. They're booked into MiQ over there to prepare for the Rugby Championship. It's going to get very, very complicated. And this 8-week bubble that we're going through here in New Zealand right now, these All Blacks could be away from home again for a very long time.
Yeah, and just the start, right? So if they're thinking about being away during this part of the year and also during the end of the year, it's a long time away from New Zealand. I think it's just a real shame that we're in this position again after going through it last year, understanding that COVID's out there and it's not gone away, and we don't have a backup plan, it seems.
Is that the frustrating part for you, JK, the fact that we've known that this is a possibility, we know the challenges the world is facing, and that we haven't positioned ourselves so that the tournament could be played here in New Zealand?
Oh, look, I just don't think there's a lot of sympathy for sports people at the moment in New Zealand. I mean, I thought they should have just flown everything here, the golf, the Formula One. But unless we're going to make some special exceptions for sports teams, so there's no MiQ, just open another hotel. But unless the government is prepared to say, well, we're going to make a special exception for that, it's not going to happen. And I don't think they are at the moment. So that's going to put Australia in the driving seat to host. And then I was just thinking about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Does he go on the November
You
tour?
won't stop talking about or thinking about Roger for the
new
next
Blues
48
player.
hours.
Yeah, the new Blues player. But I was just thinking, you know, do they just take their families and just go to Australia and then go straight to the UK?
Well, that's the big challenge as well, Hannah. You think about if they do go to Australia, they come back to play South Africa here as planned. When that bubble possibly opens, both the All Blacks and South Africa would travel to Dunedin and then to Auckland to play a test match. I mean, these are confusing and difficult times. And then you add a possible end-of-year tour. There may be a little bit of rotation here. We hate to say the word here in New Zealand, but the fact we might have to use a huge number of players through the course of the season.
Yeah, and I think it will affect World Cup chances as well, right? We promised 15 test matches, hoping to get 15 test matches. For those athletes, it's really important that they actually get to play in those test matches, and we're not using a massive squad and not wasting test matches, but certainly not what the build-up the coaches would have wanted, right?
What's Ian Foster thinking right now? The fact that he's put his plans in place, he's looking at his season, he would have balanced his players out, giving them opportunities, JK, and now that's all been put up in the air again. And look, if you're Argentina, last year you had success against the All Blacks in Australia. They'll be licking their lips thinking, you know what, maybe we can do it again.
No, that won't happen. No, that won't happen.
How often do you say that when I say something? You just say no.
But I think the interesting thing for me is that it is just an absolute nightmare for everyone, for the government, for Fozzie, for the selecting, for whatever happens. But how do you actually make this work? I don't think we're going to be able to go to Australia because you can't come back. So do South Africa and New Zealand come back in MiQ together, do they?
Well, no, they don't. Hopefully the opportunity, the bubble is finished. So they finish their test matches a day later, though. They come back to New Zealand. It's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for all those teams to be on top of their game. And so you talk about preparation, you talk about coaches under pressure, Hannah. This is less than ideal for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think New Zealand's actually got a really good opportunity to start. We're COVID-free. Why can't we start a facility for sports teams? That they can train in a bubble, they can come to New Zealand, we can play test matches, we can have crowds. I actually think it's a really good opportunity. That we could be slightly different than the rest of the world. And
after last year, the sacrifices we made, JK, do you think there should have been some sympathy for what the All Blacks went through last year?
Well, I just don't think that, I'll mention it again, I do not think the current government is prepared, and I think it's part of their policy, to make an exceptions for sports. I disagree with that because I'm just loving the Olympics. It's amazing. I think sport really lifts people. And once again, if we don't have our sport, I just think it really helps people who are going through a difficult time. If you're in Australia in lockdown and your Australian team's, beating France in Queensland, it gives you a lift. So I think there needs to be a special compensation for rugby, and people might be different. I'm not saying rugby, actually, I'm saying all sports. And I'm with you, Hannah. I think that the government's done a fantastic job keeping us COVID-free, but now we need to say, well, okay, if we can hire a hotel, we pay for the security, so it doesn't cost the taxpayer any money. I don't see why we shouldn't do that.
And it actually takes the pressure off the government MiQ. So people that are trying to get home, and we all know how hard it is for those people trying to get home, it actually takes the pressure off by taking the sports people out of the MiQ and putting them into a special facility.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, what gets confirmed over the next few days and few weeks about the complete season for the All Blacks. Well, it isn't just happening here in New Zealand. Rugby has continued around the world, Bern.
It sure has, and if you're interested, and I know you are, the sevens between New Zealand and Argentina at the moment, it's half-time, 14 points to 7. Our Kiwi boys lead, so looking good at half-time in Tokyo. Anyway, Jeff, we talk about around the world, a number of changes, or should I say additions, to Dave Rennie's Wallabies side, and I must say, the big name that's drawn gasps, Kiwi-born Quade Cooper, who's been drafted into the camp. Now, he was turned down for Aussie citizenship recently, and he went very public of how unhappy he was about it, but it seems he's definitely wanted in the green and the gold hoops for the footy team. And the Wallabies have assembled in Sanctuary Cove, so all going well, they may be on our shores by the end of the week. We wait and watch like you do. Well, we wondered what kind of firepower that the Lions would have as they were playing the world champion Springboks, and it was enough to hand the world champions A 22-19 loss. Lots of controversy in the game, though. 2 tries of the Boks disallowed, but the coach, Jacques Nienba, says the TMOs got it right. He says his team were their own enemies in the Test defeat in Cape Town. He would not, however, comment on the yellow card in the game. So have a little peek at this. This is the yellow card for Hamish Watson for a dangerous tackle on Willie LaRue. Was that warranted? Of course, plenty of chat around the South African TMO, Marius Jonker, a controversial appointment in the first place. Now, don't forget, this was only the Boks' second test in 21 months, and their lack of game time really showed, didn't it? They lead 12-3 at half-time. The second 40, all the Lions and the TMO. One South African scribe could not resist. He absolutely unleashed. Check this out, didn't hold back. Man of the match, Marius Jonker. I've heard recordings of pilots on the black box beat themselves more than every time the ref went to Jonker for a decision. And I've got to say, team, that was not the worst of it. This is the man who picked a 3-0 sweep to the Springboks. He's clearly not a happy man. He's a big fan.
Yeah, he won't be happy. I tell you, before we get on to that, what... Quade Cooper? Yeah. Seriously? Could anyone believe that news when Quade Cooper's back in the Wallabies?
I had to read it 3 times. Has he been playing? I know. Did he play for... He was playing for a super Aussie side, wasn't he?
No, I don't think he was. I think he was trying to get citizenship.
We don't know.
That's what he's been trying
we
to
don't
do.
know.
I mean, what sort of impact can he have in that group? Yes, you're bringing experience, but he's had no success against the All Blacks.
I'd be very surprised to see him get on the field. I think he might be used as a tackle dummy, to JK's words.
Enough said. Enough said. Let's focus.
Good luck, though. Good on him, though.
Oh, it's not his fault. I mean, he's available.
I think, he's had a really interesting career. I've followed him. He's done the boxing and he's just worked incredibly hard, and he keeps getting out there.
Look, he's been a really good rugby player against other teams other than the All Blacks. It's just when he's come up against the All Blacks under the pressure, he just hasn't been able to perform. Let's talk about pressure. Warren Gatland was under it. He goes to South Africa. Look, I looked at this game, I watched this game. It was a tough watch, but it wasn't a surprise. The fact this is a highlight doesn't say too much for the game, Hannah, but reality is this wasn't a bad performance from the Springboks given their preparation.
Yeah, look, 2 weeks ago we were talking about whether this tour was even going to go ahead with the amount of COVID cases South Africa had in their team. Not the result they obviously would have wanted, but I actually thought it was a pretty good start by them.
Does that make Warren Gatland the most successful Lion coach of all time? Or do we have to wait till next week?
Depends. You'll have to ask a Chiefs fan.
Yeah. I think that, for me, it's an absolutely amazing series. I mean, I was really looking forward to it. You mentioned it before about the crowds, but, I mean, I think it's fantastic. The Lions have won the first one. Brutal
Game. Look, there wasn't a lot of rugby played. There was a lot of kicking. There was 39 kicks in the first half alone. The fact neither team was prepared to play. 12-3 at half-time. I want to talk about the fans. The fact that when you're at home and you're looking for an opportunity to win and you're trying to build pressure, and we all know how challenging it is to play in South Africa, I think this hurt South Africa. The fact up 12-3, not being able to change the momentum in the second half and get their fans behind them.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I was the opposite.
And the Lions, right? Yeah. Both of them.
I think it's the Lions. Lions will miss their crowd more, don't you think?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a celebration but for me, we know how difficult it is, JK, in South Africa. You were there in '92. You went through this. The pressure they can put on you, it gets crazy. They're not up at the Veldt. They're not up north. They're down south at sea level. But for me, when you're trying to steer momentum, a home crowd can make a massive difference. Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that. I think the Veldt's probably harder on the high Veldt. I mean, when I first went there, I found it incredibly difficult. The kickers like you loved it, though, because they used to sail 20 metres also
further.
To chase the kicks,
but really difficult late in the game, burning, real burning in your gullet. It was really difficult. I don't know, players probably fitter today, but yeah, I think both. I think that it just doesn't make a spectacle, Hannah. I mean, I love the Barmy Army, I love the South African supporters, and it just makes it feel flat. Yeah,
it's one of the best things about the Lions tour, right? You turn up, there's massive crowds on both sides. Just being part of the test match game day is incredible.
Okay, let's talk about the game itself, though. After the first test, the Lions, they come out on top. They're going 1-0. We know there'll be a response. Can this South African team, the way that they play, I don't know if they're going to break a game open, but can they be any more intense than they were in the first 80 minutes they faced?
Yeah, they were big and strong, weren't they? Kicking in the first half. I actually thought they actually gained territory in that first half. Their kicks in the second half weren't so good. Bounce of the ball, they got unlucky in a couple of TMO decisions. if that had changed, we could have been talking about a different story, right?
Discipline, everything though, JK. I mean, a number of penalties. Andre Pollard had an opportunity late to take them ahead on the scoreboard, and he missed that before they conceded another penalty. Is this not an indication of where the game is right now in terms of what we saw in 2019 Rugby World Cup? Defence is dominating.
Yeah, and I keep mentioning it, is our game fan-centric now? Or as everyone, players included, just out there to actually win the football game? I know what I'd be doing if I was a player. I'd be out there to win the football game. But we need to actually change the rules. 37 kicks, coming down to the wire. You can't blame the ref either. But it's coming down to ref decision.
Isn't that Test match rugby at the highest level?
Boring.
Yeah. But Super Rugby is an
boring.
entertainment package. You're talking about that. You may think it's boring, but the intensity, the physical nature of these athletes, isn't that what we should expect from these two teams?
Yeah, potentially in the first half. I think finding territory and grinding a team down, but not throughout the entire Test match when it wasn't going right.
You would have blown up. You would have blown up.
You're blowing up now.
Yeah, but I'd blow up because if I didn't get the ball, I'd blow up. Like, the crowd comes to see us, not the forwards.
So do you think Cheslin Colby goes in and talks to the coach and say, look, I touched the ball 3 times in this game with any opportunity with no space. This is one of the most dynamic players in the world. But does South Africa go away from what they're very best at? Their forward pack, their kicking game, their defence is dominant.
Yeah, no, it's boring. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we're talking.
But
it's
been winning rugby. It's won them a Rugby World Cup.
If you're a purist like you sit there, you look at the tactical side of the kicking game, and you go, yeah, like it was really interesting from a tactical point of view. If you're a fan, you sit there and go, oh, what shall I flick off to?
Yeah, but Ian Foster, Hannah, and their coaching staff and their research will have started on South Africa. From the very first test, right, they'll be looking at that and going, you know what? I know exactly what we're going to face. How are they going to break that down?
Yeah, they're big and strong. I would be a little bit nervous if I was sitting there as the All Black coaches. The contact area, big, strong athletes having to dominate in that contact area, which we haven't done in the first kind of 2 games that we've played.
Yeah, and that's the reality of...
Well, we either play them at their own game or we actually continue to innovate and change the game. I think for 4 or 5 years, probably from 2011 through to 2019, we innovated, we changed the game, we brought in pods, we ran people around, and it worked against South Africa. If the game is stop-start, if you can't retain the ball because the ref is going to find a penalty, if you can't hold on to the ball for 10 or 12 rucks anymore, then you can't wear the opposition down. So it's just going to be bigger and bigger, stronger, and more tackling.
And you'll look like that, like you always do when you don't get what you want, JK. If we top Pool A, we won't face the top of Pool B until possibly the final. And that's the critical thing, isn't it, Hannah? The way we work our way through this tournament. Reality is 8 of these 12 teams are going to make the playoffs. We just need to control our own destiny. Yeah,
interesting. Fiji's first game, however, certainly not convincing over Japan. Let's hope Fiji plays the game and tops their pool as well, and we don't see them until later on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's whether or not you can trust them, but the fact that they don't drop one. And when you think about what happens here in terms of the quarterfinals, there we are, the winner of Pool A. So second best third, that's not a bad result. That's what we're looking for. But those are the top two quarterfinals. That's what we will face. So then if they can stay on top of winner Pool B, that's Fiji, will avoid them. And we just don't want to go through that again. JK, look, these two teams, they clearly look as though they're the top 2 sides, but that's not going to be easy. And I suppose that's what it's all for. This is what it's all about. They're going to have to get a little bit better. Any concerns the fact we don't necessarily have that top-end speed that some of the other teams do have, the likes of the United States?
Yeah, no, exactly what I was thinking about today. Watched the competition in Townsville, and Fiji look really, really good because they've got that combination of size and speed. And that, although they looked terrible today in their first game, but that's what worries me the most. I've seen the game today. That's why I was a bit shocked that Caleb didn't make the side, because he's big, strong and fast. I know he's still over there, but for me, that would be my biggest concern, Hannah.
Yeah, they're going to have to play sevens. They're going to have to outwit some teams to actually make it through and win the gold medal. Fiji certainly had the better of them over in Townsville, winning 2 of those 2 matches. And the big game players, right?
There's an element of luck to sevens, though, from time to time. It's such a short game, and you look at Kenya, and I saw them today. They should have beaten the USA. They were right there, and it was only a 95-metre try at the very last play of the game. So when you get to that point, those knockout stages, probably no contest is going to be easy. You're going to be at the top of your game.
Yeah, 100%. 14 minutes isn't a long time, and a couple of bounces of the ball go the wrong way, and that can be the end of your sevens tournament.
Bounce of the ball going the wrong way. It's been like that in the trivia question for JK. Well, it was last week anyway, and it was Brad Thorne, actually, who was the oldest All Black of all time. Everyone doubted that I said that.
Can I get two answers?
Yeah, I got two
like
answers
you did
last week. I know. I debate that, Boone. But what have you got for this week, Boone?
Goldie, you talk about JK pulling that face when he doesn't get his own way. Well, what about you when you want to have two pots at the old trivia question? I don't know. I don't know that, Jeff. Very quickly, can I give you an update on the 7 score? Final score, New Zealand against Argentina, 35 points to 14, so Kiwis getting home. We love that. All right, trivia question though. Here's your head scratcher for tonight. The question is, of course, it's around our FPC. Which are the 4 teams that have won the women's NPC in its history? Now, 1999 was when we first had a women's competition. It got changed in name only to the Farah Palmer Cup in 2016. But since 1999, team, I want to know which are the 4 teams that have won that competition. All right, so ponder that at home. I know that the panel's going to be head-scratching furiously, but we are at College Rifles in Auckland, and they can certainly churn them out. We're going to talk to 3 of their famous clubbies who have gone on to top honours, but we're not talking Black Ferns at the moment. Our focus at the moment is on FPC.
We know that each of these games, it's a short comp. You've got to win all your games, otherwise it's a struggle.
Tuivasa, she struck that beautifully. There's a space there. Gets it away. Try in the corner.
Who else than Kendra Coxon?
When she's determined, she is going to go all the way.
Can she link up with some support play? She does.
She got the pressure on you, betcha. Look at the smile.
Get out of jail and get another win, but only just. Kia ora, welcome back to the Breakdown, live from College Rifles in Auckland as the Breakdown team hit the road. And it's my favourite part of the show, it's trivia time, and a little bit of head scratching from our panel. I must say there's been no phoning a friend, no conferring, just the way I like it, just a lot of sweating and a bit of guesswork. So the question is for tonight, which are the 4 teams that have won the women's NPC in its history, dating right back to 1999? Can't wait to hear Jeff Kleiman. It's definitely not Brad Thorne related. Goldie?
I'll get half of them right, Auckland and Canterbury. So I've done that bit.
50%?
And then, I got nothing from the crowd. Nothing from the crowd. They all claimed they knew, and they'll nod their head afterwards.
Manawatu and Country's Manukau will make up that 4. Thank you.
He says with great purpose and no accuracy.
I don't think that's 75%. Hannah, what are you going to chip in with?
I am going to chuck in Wellington and
Was
Counties, Auckland and Canterbury.
Oh, we have a winner. Fantastic.
So JK's
Hannah,
one, JK's
absolutely
was right.
Wellington, Auckland, Counties, Monaco and Canterbury. But look at that. Auckland, absolutely dominant. 15 wins. That's not bad, is it? All right, the FPC's up and running. We are just 2 weeks into it, but so much action already. Let's take a peek at the points table and see how the teams have fared so far. In the Premiership, Auckland's still on fire. Auckland and Canterbury unbeaten. Wellington and Waikato have only played 1 game, as they say, early days. In the Championship, Manawatu, Northland and North Harbour all taking wins, and we need to talk about North Harbour. We must. North Harbour take a bow, winless in 2020. They took an absolute hammering last year. They lost players, but the FPC team eked out a win 35-32 over Tasman at the weekend. Bravo. And staying with FPC matters, Kendra Coxon, what an absolute legend. Wowee, the gritty halfback became the first woman to clock up 1,000 points in domestic rugby when her Canterbury side arm wrestled a 24-17 win over Waikato. She debuted for Canterbury in 2007 as a 19-year-old, took 19 points in this match, the Black Fern finishing up with a total of 1,007 career points to her name. and you can include 65 tries in that number as well. Not bad at all, would you say? She's got some gas for a 33-year-old, I tell you what. She'd leave us all for dead. And I'd hasten to guess that someone on your panel probably has played against and alongside Kendra Cox-Edge, and it's definitely not you, Goldie.
No, that's right, and we've added another World Cup winner, and it's not JK or I. Oh, no, it's actually JK. I'm the only one that's not here. I forgot about 87, it's so long ago. Doris Taufateau joins us now, and Doris, look, it's been a long time World Cup winner, but you've played over 153 games for this club. Take a break away, you're back playing the representative, but what's this club meant to you?
I guess you say 150 games, but that's 150 times that I've been here and this club supported me throughout my journey in rugby. It means a lot that I've been able to last this long, to play 150 games and give back to this club that's given me so much.
Doris, awesome to see you back in the Auckland team. I hear that you're actually playing with one of your students. How's that been?
Oh, it's special. I mean, it's something that I would call a milestone for myself. I work a lot with kids at Grassroots, and that just reminds me why it's so important to give at Grassroots. And yeah, she's definitely up-and-coming talent, and I love that I can be in the same space and watch her grow and just watch her be great, I guess.
What does she call you at training?
A lot of names, but she doesn't call me Miss, that's for sure.
Do you give, like, because what I'd do is turn up and say, oh, sorry, Miss, I couldn't do my homework because I was at training. Does she do anything like that?
No.
You did that every day,
Yeah, that's
JK.
true.
You don't do your homework for this show half the time,
Yeah,
but that's okay. Doris, let's talk about the desire to get back and play representative rugby. Where's that come from? The fact that you missed it so much? I know you're in Dunedin this week, just enjoying the trips away and being part of that environment again.
Yeah, I love being back. I was just saying before that it's actually quite refreshing being in the space with so many young people in the team, young fire, and yeah, definitely feel old and definitely trying to catch up with everyone, but I love that I'm back in a space and part of the growing game.
What are the biggest changes you've seen over your time and now probably coming back and getting back into sort of representative level? Have you noticed a difference?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think my lungs do as well. The game's definitely picked up. It's quite fast now. A lot of girls are working hard behind the scenes. Just to give an example, you know, back in the days, props used to be big like me, and they're not anymore. They've come through. They're quite toned and small and strong, but that just points to all the hard work that they do behind the scenes.
Just on that, Doris, obviously we heard this week around the semi-professional competition starting up next year. Has there been much chat in the team around that competition and what that means for women's rugby?
I definitely haven't been around those conversations, but I have heard that there's some things set up for next year, which I think is great for the development of women's rugby.
Let's talk about that. Where would you like to see it go? I mean, how would you like to see the game continue to grow? And it's getting opportunity now, but every game's been covered live on Sky, which is great, giving exposure, but what more do you think could be done?
I guess for me it was quite exciting to see the Blues and the Chiefs women for the first time this year, and to see a bit of a crowd turn up to support that. To see more of that and more teams in that round would be awesome. Yeah.
Are you back, and if you were to be selected, or are you just back at this level, or higher honours?
Dare I say the R word, but no.
No?
No.
Well, look, it's just great to have you back out there. The fact that you're still so obviously proud of your club and where you've come from, and now you're passing that knowledge on to students and all in Punny environment. Thanks for joining us on The Breakdown. It's great to have you with us. But of course, it's not just about the individual. This is very much a family affair here at this club, Burn.
Ruahei and Kiritapu Demant, so not one but three college rifles exponents who have gone on to wear the black jersey. So we are in great company. May I say welcome to The Breakdown, but what is your connection with college rifles? How did you end up here? Because Bay of Plenty born, you went to school in Warkworth.
Yes.
How did you end up here?
Well, I guess there's no real cool story. At the time we were playing rugby in the North Harbour region, and North Harbour secondary schools, there was no competition. And so our dad said, well, it's time for you to go play rugby in Auckland. We didn't know any clubs. Club rugby or women's rugby wasn't really popular at the time. And so we kind of had heard about the club, and we came down one day after school, and we were sitting in the car park actually waiting for our first training, and these two massive Tongan girls walked past, and we were freaking out, telling our dad, we don't want to go out the car, Dad, we want to go home. And Doris was one of them.
See what you've done, Doris? You nearly scared them off.
We were just happy she was on our team.
And you said it wasn't a cool story. That's a very cool story. So how did you, Kiritapu, get into it as well? Because you're the baby sister. How did you get into playing rugby?
So I kind of just had to tag along. So we came from a soccer background, and then our dad kind of made us switch into rugby in high school, and Lou at the time was already at high school. I was an intermediate, and I was forced to play high school schoolgirls rugby. So I came in, little skinny Māori girl, and was forced to go to the trainings, came down here to College Rifles, and I used to just make up any excuse not to get on the field. And at the time, Anna Richards, who was an ex-player of College Rifles, was our coach at the time, and she knew that I didn't want to play, and I just, I've got a sore shoulder, so I'm out for the week. And the following week come, I think I've got something sore, can't play, and
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed. So yeah, that's how it came to be. And we've been lucky. We've had a good run with rugby, and we've been lucky enough to also represent international level together, which we've been the second sister duo from this club. So Anna Richards and Fiona Richards have represented as a sister duo, and then we've been honoured to also share that experience together.
As are we to watch you. We're in great company. Yeah. So what do you think the health of the game for females are? Do you feel encouraged about the longevity and the future for the female game?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really lucky within the past few seasons at College Rifles. There's a really strong connection to the secondary school scene now, and I know that that's something that's also echoed in other provinces, and something that hasn't really been as strong in years gone by. It's really encouraging, to turn up to watch junior rugby, and there's girls teams. There's not just girls playing with the boys, but there's full girls teams playing ripper and playing tackle rugby. So it's really healthy for the future, and especially with the sevens now as well.
Now you say that, I'm a proud mum of two girls who also play, and something I prepared earlier. Now this is not my daughter, but this is Northcote, under 15 rip, and how about that for a finish? It is healthy. We have nearly 120 in our tiny little club, so the future is looking bright. And I'm a little bit like you. I worry in the car park when I see the big girls going past. Can I just get your thoughts finally on the prospect of some females playing akin to our super teams? It looks like it's happening. The wheels are in motion. How much does that excite you?
It's super exciting. I've been out of rugby now for a year and a bit, and just watching the game grow so much in the past 18 months, with the first Super Women's competition to happen mid this year, and now they're looking to have a Super competition for next year. So it's exciting for the young players that they've got this opportunity now that women's rugby is going to be a professional sport for the years to come, and I don't know, it's just something bright that they can look up to.
This is where you say the phone's running hot, Lou. The phone's running hot, Talk it up.
I mean, if women's rugby can get to a point where it is the only job, with so many of my teammates go to training, go to work, go to training again. It's a reality for women all across the country. We do it because we love it, but I guess the hope that young players that are starting out now can do this full time and be rewarded for it, and can dedicate all their time and energy just like our sevens programs. That's the goal.
That's the goal, that's the dream. And a qualified lawyer, I don't know where you all find the time. You're all superwomen. So thank you for what you've done and what you're going to continue to do. But you know what? It all starts at grassroots level, doesn't it? So let's have a little look at the action around the country. Club news in the East Coast. Check this out. This is the East Coast final. Sean Parks, or Sam Parks, I should say, he's featured before on the breakdown, kicked a 40-metre penalty for Oawa to beat TVC 11 points to 8 in extra time, nonetheless. And in Wanganui final, here's a 5-pointer by Toby Lenos to get Border home 23-18 against Kairo. All right.
Easy job, but I mean, let's have our discussion. We've been lucky enough, all of us, to play with great players. Hannah, for you, what is it that sets players apart? We've heard from so many great players just then, individuals, coaches, but for you, the some you've played with, what made them great?
Yeah, and look, I'll speak to what Richie said, being consistently good week in, week out. At international level, you're lucky enough to turn up and just do your job, but being the best on the field at your job and then bringing your X factor as to why you've made the black jersey.
Sometimes, though, challenging, JK, for a number of players who pick up injuries earlier on in their career, the fact that they were wonderful for a number of seasons and then there are things that have held them back, but you've seen the talent, you've seen the ability, you've seen so many players with potential. What sets the great players apart for you?
When talent meets work rate and sacrifice and discipline, I think that's the real difference for me. And then the ability in a moment to put your hand up. So the team's in trouble, I'll do that. And for me, just the incredible sacrifice off the field that a lot of people don't see, both mentally and physically and family-wise. And I think all those combinations. But I think if you think about a moment in a game of rugby where you're under the pump, the opposition's great. That's the thing that people don't realise, especially when you're a supporter of the All Blacks. You sort of expect us to win all the time, but when you're out there and you're under the pump and you know that the game's in the balance, and one of those players does something special.
So, Hannah, where does leadership sit for you then when you're having these discussions? Because there are so many talented players, but there are others who have almost changed the course of the All Blacks through their ability to lead on and off the field. Is that an important part of it? It's an important part for me when I think of changing an environment and the way they can inspire other players around them.
Yeah, it's important. It's not important for all, but it's important for a special few that need to lead the group. And whether that's through actions or whether that's through words, absolutely critical. You don't get a good team without that leadership group.
I'm just asking, is it a plus? So would there be another player that was probably better, but if you added the captaincy and leadership, does that make you better?
And you imagine when we go through this group, you think about all of the players that have been in the All Black jersey, JK, absolutely, when you're having to differentiate between players, because the hardest thing about this is, yeah, but I think when you're talking about through the eras, and you're enjoying inspiring performances and moments that you're talking about, for me, the players always have one special moment that stands out, where they've been at the very, very top, where they've had to perform, Hannah, where it's been the difference between their team winning and losing. There are not many great players that haven't had those moments. I think they're critical when you're trying to separate guys. Yeah,
the big moment players, and I think the legends of the game will go down and will remember those players for those moments.
And I think one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to this is hopefully the fans at home, you want to get involved in this, because it's through the generations for me, JK, because it would be quite easy to remember the last 25 years because the game is exposure, the amount of games, the test matches that they play. JK, there are so many. You go back to the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, some of our legends of the game. It's going to be hard to compare, but we have to give them the right justice, the honesty, the fact that they did change the game in those early days.
Oh, I tell you, it's special in my upbringing. I tell you, Dad would let me stay up. We used to get up and watch games at 3 o'clock. You know, you'd get chips and you'd sit up in your pajamas and you just couldn't, invariably you'd fall asleep and Dad would have to wake you up. But monumental things growing up, you know, we didn't have anything else. We didn't have cell phones or anything. That was what we did. And I can remember, like for me, Brian Williams, although we didn't have to get up that late, in South Africa in '72 was unbelievable for me. And I'll never forget, you know, a 10-foot sidestep that I was just in awe of my whole life.
We're going to get to the outsides. We're a few weeks away from that, but we had to get a panel together to look through the ages and to decide who the top players were, to debate and give you an opportunity to remember, and who was the greatest of the greatest in the All Black jersey. And we asked the voice of the All Blacks, Grant Nisbet, to run that discussion.
Kia ora and welcome to New Zealand's Greatest 15 on The Breakdown. Here at Sky Sport, we're trying to find the best ever All Blacks team with help from a vote from the Kiwi public. I'm Grant Nisbet, and over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to be joined by rugby broadcasters Ken Laban, Ricky Swinell and Phil Gifford in our search to find the best ever New Zealand rugby team. Let's look into how we'll make this process work. We have a short list in every position. We'll debate until we find our winner. Then we'll combine it with the public vote to see who makes up the greatest 15. We'll reveal the winners in positional groups, front row, locks, loose forwards and so on over the next 8 weeks. OK, well, let's get into it. We're going to start at loose head prop.
My pick would be Steve McDowell, but Steve McDowell to me was the forerunner of the athletic and dynamic prop that we see today.
And then Tony Woodcock, 118 test, a Rugby World Cup final try. We will never forget that. And just that old school attitude in a modern era for Tony Woodcock. But in saying all of that, I'm going to agree with Phil and I say Steve McDowell too.
Woody, or Tony Woodcock, his role in the professional era, his role in World Cup finals, his immense strength and power with the ball and without the ball, in terms, especially at scrum time, was immense. And I think, obviously, he'll be on a lot of people's minds.
When he was loose head prop, the scrum didn't go far, did it? But I think what we should really do is leave it to the public.
Righto.
And they'll sort it out. But we've got Steve McDowell and we've got Tony Woodcock. What do you think? We're up to hooker now, the greatest ever hooker in the list. We've got Ron Hemi, Sean Fitzpatrick, Kevin Mialamu and Dane Coles.
For me, it's Sean Fitzpatrick. He changed the role. He became that fourth loose forward. Obviously, he was an outstanding leader of a team in that 96 team as well that did something unexpected and for the first time. So, yeah, as much as I love Kevin Mialamu as a person, as a great bloke and a great All Black, I'm going Sean Fitzpatrick.
Ken?
Kevin Mialamu, hands down. For me, I remember Sir Graham Henry asked one day if the All Black forwards pack was trapped in a cage with a tiger, who would be the last two standing? And he said Rodney So'oialo and Kevin Mialamu.
I have to go with Sean Fitzpatrick. In South Africa, for example, they hated him so much that I remember talking to his mother during the 1996 tour, and she said, do you think they'll actually go and hurt Sean when he's off the field? Because Fitzpatrick, I think, had absolutely everything. He was a slightly chubby-cheeked little boy when he played in the Baby Blacks, but he was as tough as nails, and he just got tougher and tougher as he went on. So for me, it has to be Sean Fitzpatrick.
I think we're agreed. Our greatest contender at All Black hooker is Sean Fitzpatrick. Now we're looking at tight head prop, and the players we've got nominated here, Kevin Skinner, Ken Gray, Owen Franks and Olo Brown. Boy, what a lineup. Righto, Phil, let's start with you.
I just think Ken Gray, just looking at the man, was possibly the scariest looking person to ever play in the front row for the All Blacks, and the way he played, I think he lived up to what he looked like.
There's like a mystique about there, isn't there, about front rowers in particular, and there's one on that list that I think has a mystique, and that is Olo Brown.
Yes.
And I want to know if any of you guys ever have actually interviewed him, because infamously didn't give very many interviews. So have you ever talked to him? Have you ever got him on tape?
Oh, subsequently.
Well, it was more than very quiet. As I understand it, I remember trying to get interviews with him when he was a player, and I don't know anybody that when he was a player, he was like Joe. He didn't give a single interview, as far as I'm aware.
I'm going to go for Ken Gray. In my view, you know, the great front rowers in terms of tight head props, Ken Gray.
Well, it was a great field, it really was. But our nomination for the greatest of all tight head props for the All Blacks is Ken Gray.
So you've heard the expert panel giving their thoughts. Agree or disagree? We'd love to get your vote on who you think are our front row go-tos. Head to our Sky Facebook page and make your selection. The winners will be revealed next week on The Breakdown. And I have to throw in Fitzy in there for me, not for his might and his muscle. He was uncompromising, not for his yap and his chat. He would put fear into the opposition and at times his own players, but most of all, he really was the unofficial TMO of the 90s.
You're 100% right. I was fortunate enough to play with Fitzy at the end of his career. JK, you were there for the
I was
start.
unfortunate enough to room with them.
I don't think I ever had the pleasure of that. He was the captain, so he got his own room.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that in your day. But you think about those names there and the players that we're so qualified, aren't we? Us three backs here talk about the front rows. But
I mean, already for me, Kevin Skinner, legend against the South Africans, changed side because he was a New Zealand champion boxer. So I think that generation's hard because for me, they were like these mystical people who had this aura about them. And I remember meeting Kevin a few times and, you know, he's a bit like the others, pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, players there that changed the game, and they talked about Fitzy, but Dane Coles, you'd have to say, it's the same conversation. You think about the role that he played, and he looked as though he was a midfield back. You can remember him bursting through the middle of the park. I mean, it's obvious there are players through the course of history, the way the game has changed. We've led that change, Hannah. Is that probably what makes this discussion even more difficult when you start going through the eras?
Yeah, and those players coming into the professional era and how that changed for them. And Dane Coles is a great person to speak about, right? Runs like a back, tackles like a forward, goes into those dark places that you need front rowers to go.
You look at those players that you've played with, the likes of a Farah Palmer. Does she fit the bill for that? The fact was she the player that influenced your team and led from the front?
Yeah, she was a great leader of the game. She certainly wasn't the biggest front rower that we had, but she put her body on the line every weekend.
And when you look at those players, JK, and you look at all of them, that's what All Black Rugby, was built around. The fact that it started up front. That was when you're growing up, you had to thank them first. I know you might not have liked it, but the reason you're scoring so many tries, as I was, the fact that they were doing the work. You look at those names, that's maybe what set us apart. We win 77% of our test matches. They're the reason why.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at home, you should get involved, but the first thing you should do is write down what it means to you and why you think someone's different, because that's what I had to do. I think, and I love Fitzy, very good mate of mine, but he changed the game. So if you write down exactly what it is, moments they've changed the game, it's really, really interesting, and it gets really difficult.
And the leadership thing, the leadership model. Look, it's been great to be here at College Rifles, Hannah. It's been great to come back. There's a dance floor there. I'm not sure on a Monday night you're going to get rolling here, but this has been nice down memory lane.
It's been amazing to be back in my old club. Yeah, no, I won't be putting the dancing shoes on tonight, but there has been numerous nights where that floor has been...
And I must admit, I did enjoy the fact that JK, just as we were coming in, he got asked to take his hat off. Apparently he's the first person who's managed to do that in here.